Hello and welcome back. In today's video, I'm here to give you an interview with a Wycombe Wanderers fan called Steve Gray. I wanted to get a bit more information about Matt Bloomfield and find out what he did at Wycombe as a manager. I think at this moment in time, there's a few unknowns for this upcoming season, and I feel like some of the answers which Steve Gray did give in his interview with myself I think would help a lot of Luton fans in maybe getting a bit more excited for this upcoming season, and also just to give a bit more information. There's only so much research you can actually do about Wycombe and what Matt Bloomfield did at the football club, but I think it's so much better to hear it from someone who actually got to witness it. Before I give you the interview, smash that like button. Let me know what you think down in the video comments. I would love to make more videos like this going forward. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I make Luton and EFL content. And yeah, thank you for the 5,000 subscribers, by the way. I wanted to hit that before the season starts. We managed to do it, so thank you so much. The next target, let's go and hit 10,000 before the season ends. Big target there to hit, but hopefully we can do it. But anyway, this is Steve Gray, my interview with him. His social media links will all be down in the video description. So yeah, enjoy the interview and I'll see you after it. So Steve, how would you rank Matt Bloomfield's time at Wycombe?
Overall good. I mean, it didn't get off to the best start. It was obviously really big boots to fill with Gareth Ainsworth, obviously was the previous successor, and the timing of it as well. I don't think anyone really anticipated Ainsworth and his assistant leaving. The only two teams, maybe three teams ever that could have poached him would have been Blackburn, Preston, or QPR, of which he ended up going to QPR. So the timing of it was not ideal. And at first I thought that the club had gone down a very kind of like cheap, sentimental appointment with Bloomfield, because obviously everyone called him Mr. Wycombe, and he was and is a Wycombe legend. But I guess I can see that in the short term, it probably was the best possible immediate appointment to kind of keep the feel-good factor at the club. But unfortunately, I think tactically, he was a bit out of his depth. I do remember really kind of questioning his, I think it was the tactical side that let him down, because I think like the enthusiasm of the players and everything, I think was clearly there. I don't think he had a problem with motivating the players. I just think maybe it was that step up from League Two to League One was quite challenging. And our squad was like still one of the really small squads in the division. But, you know, we quickly fell out of the playoff places. And Bloomfield was really in that first season really struggling to see out victories. That was something I do remember was a bit of a theme. We were conceding a lot of late goals, and it really took a long time for things to get going. Even I myself, after about, I think it was Wigan away, I think that's the one where I really was like, okay, Bloomfield out. And a lot of people were calling for change, but lo and behold, with a pretty good transfer window with like lots of good loan players, and going into that following season, it ended really well, and he managed to turn it around. We got to the cup final at Wembley against Peterborough, and the momentum of that back end of the season just carried straight on into last season. And you know, at first I was like, what is going on here? You know, and the style of football, I think, had completely transformed as well. We'll talk about formations a bit more in a bit, but the style had completely changed, and it was no fluke that we were the top scorers in the division, ahead of Birmingham or keeping touching distance with Birmingham. And it was amazing. Like tactically as well, I think he had really found his style. Substitutions were good. You need a little bit of luck with the injuries and everything as well, and I think we did okay with that. But yeah, I think Bloomfield, with enough time, he was really able to turn it around and prove his worth as a quite a sought after manager at this level.
So you can definitely say he definitely got better as time went on. The more he got used to being around the group, and then just learning, I guess, learning on the job as well. Because he still technically at that point was such a new guy in management. You're not gonna. Sometimes you get it straight away. Sometimes it's like it's a little journey. Sometimes you have a bad move, and then you go on to have a really good move. So you can definitely say, like at the early start, at the early part of his Wycombe career, that tactically sometimes he got stuff wrong, which would make sense because in our last game of the season against West Brom, tactically we looked nowhere near like we did in previous weeks. So I don't know whether there was just poor decision making going into that game. I'm not too sure. All we needed was a point, and we would have stayed up in the Championship. But then a 5-3 defeat to West Brom, and we're now in League One. But so yeah, there's nothing we can really do about it now. But in terms of actual strengths, what would you say is his main strength as a manager?
It's a good question. I would say his main strengths were, I'd say one of his main strengths actually was getting the ball on the floor and good line breaking passing. He relies a lot on, I think he really got the best out of some of the centre mids that we had at the time. He almost sort of had them doing a different role, maybe to Ainsworth, you could say. And they became, rather than just sort of being a bit one-dimensional under Ainsworth, not that they were one-dimensional, but I think their roles were simpler. But then I really noticed like the midfield became like absolute workhorses. And arguably we did acquire some slightly more talented midfielders by sort of like the back end of Bloomfield's tenure. So we had, for example, Aaron Morley, who is now at Bolton, and Cameron Humphreys, who was on loan from Ipswich, who they both played a really big part in helping us get to like the top of the league. I would say that was definitely one of his strengths was the link up from the midfield to the forwards. I think he managed to get that really good, especially, and again, like can't help but contrast it to Dods now, who's in charge for us, where, I mean, you've probably seen it, like the drop off in form of Kone, for example. The forwards are much more isolated. Their supply is a little bit fewer and far between, relying a little bit more on set pieces. So yeah, I would say the midfield was one of Bloomfield's strengths, and also just the sort of composure to play out from the back. Something that honestly, it didn't come immediately, but by the end of it, with the four at the back, I genuinely was quite calm at games watching Wycombe play out from the back. And that is something that I never, ever thought I'd say, especially under Ainsworth. But yeah, I think that's also one of his strengths. And then in terms of like, stuff that isn't necessarily formation based, I would say he also got a really, as you said, like level-headed. I think that's a really good way to describe him. He'd know how to get quite a lot out of the players, and I mean, I think like we saw it at Wembley as well and everything, like the players just seem to be able to find this second wind, and it kind of buys into the whole Wycombe ethos really, which has always been to try and outwork the opponent. I think the message on the changing room, the big one is hard work beats talent when talent hardly works, and I think Bloomfield definitely instilled that into the players.
That's really interesting, that some of the stuff you said there, because I'm trying to picture what he's going to do with the Luton players as you were talking. So when you were talking about the midfield, I was looking at the Luton midfield, right? He's got Walsh, he's got Baptiste, he's got Saville, these players that have played at a higher level, who are technically really good passers off the ball, can do those, line breaking balls into the attacking players. So I can definitely like just vision it in my head. And recently we've just signed Josh Keeley from Tottenham, who's a really good ball playing goalkeeper. So I can literally see it like picturing out, right, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Yeah. So it's really actually really, I'm trying to think of what the actual word is, but it's nice to hear that you're saying stuff that I can actually see him actually already starting to build. In terms of, encouragement, exactly. In terms of, so formation wise, we've touched on it. Was it a 3 at the back to start off with, and then he transitioned to a 4?
I actually can't remember. I know that we definitely finished with the 4. I'm trying to remember if there was a time where he played 3. The formations that I can definitely remember Bloomfield using were, he did for quite a while, and I think this was like when I remember like the Wigan game where I was like, nope, no more, Bloomfield out. I think it was a 4-4-1-1. So we had a second striker, if you will, who was Dale Taylor, who was on loan at us, behind like the main striker. And it was okay. It still offered a bit of width and everything, but there were some weaknesses in that team. Like trying to remember, like, you know, it was still quite an aging squad as well at the time. But 3 at the back, I really can't remember. This is quite poor Wycombe knowledge for me, to be fair. I can't remember if he tried it or not. And I don't know what form. I have no idea at all as to what formation he was playing at Colchester, where he actually did a really good job with them, pulling them out of the relegation zone within the 3 months that he was there. But I know that we did like a 4-4-1-1. We did a 4-3-3, like a flat 4-3-3, which he used quite a bit at Wycombe. I think sometimes occasionally he used 4-4-2 with Kone and Udo up top. He also had an attacking 4-3-3 with one more attacking midfielder, while the other 2 kind of being a bit of a pivot. And that one, I think by the end of it, was sort of the one that allowed us the best freedom to play out from the back. That 4 at the back, as long as you've got, you know, really competent kind of passes of the ball, both centrally and in the fullback positions, which we were quite lucky to have had. It actually like panned out like really, really well, to be fair.
Yeah, I think the reason why I mentioned the 3 at the back is because I think he mentioned it in a couple of his interviews, and I think is it Joe Jacobson, your left back? Yeah, I think he did a interview with one of the Luton content guys, and he mentioned then that apparently him and Matt had a conversation how they wanted to transition from the 3 into the 4. I've been told by professional footballers once I've spoken to them that formations mean nothing. That's the general feeling I get from them. It doesn't really matter if it's a 4, it's a 3. It's about what you've been told to do, whatever position you're in. That's the most important bit. Yeah, I thought I asked because we are playing a 3 at the moment. Well, we were playing a 3 last season, and the biggest question mark is, right, are we going to transition to that 4 in this upcoming year? As I'm recording this video, I can't see it unless we bring more wide attacking players in. But at the moment, our width comes from our wing backs in Alfie Doughty and also Isaiah Jones, who are, you know, very good wing backs. Yeah. So that's what I kind of see it going as of right now.
Now that you mentioned I do remember Joe Jacobson on the left-hand side of a back 3, actually. That does vaguely ring a bell. Okay. I think we might have tried it at one point. And I think maybe one of the reasons it didn't work is because we might have had Jack Grimmer, who is naturally, in my opinion, a right back, playing the right side of the back 3, and it's just a bit like, it's a bit limiting. But yeah, once you got those, it's about finding that balance, isn't it? You might have a really good idea, but if you haven't got the players who have got the capability to execute the idea, then it's doesn't work.
Yeah, I completely get what you mean. So in terms of at the time where Luton decided to sweep in for Matt Bloomfield, what was that football? What was that? I would say was probably the best, you know, football he was playing and producing on the pitch.
Yeah, it was really good. Probably the best football we've ever seen Wycombe play. I don't think that's a crazy statement to say. There were some people saying that it was starting to wear off a little bit, a few draws starting to creep in. I'm wondering if certain players maybe were getting a little bit tired, but either way, the football was very adaptable, actually, because we did go to some really tricky away games and kind of do a bit of a smash and grab, but we still had much more possession than what we're used to seeing as Wycombe fans, shall we say. Lots of football on the deck, lots of, like I said, the expansive passes, line breaking passes, recycling the ball, keeping the ball, good use of the width as well. I mean, last season, in terms of the width, we were quite dependent on Trying to think. Udo would play out wide, which was, I mean, naturally, I think he's a striker, but he's so industrious. He can be a nuisance and do a job out wide as well. And then we've got Fred Onyedinma and Gareth McCleary as well, who, I'll be honest, I think Gareth McCleary the season before was poor, and Bloomfield again has managed to make him a little bit more effective in that time, right up until he left for Luton. Fred Onyedinma as well. Had some really good spells, some really good games, but also I think he's one of those where the form really dropped off towards the tail end of the season after Bloomfield left. And whether that's a coincidence or not, I'm not sure. But you'll be very familiar with Fred Onyedinma as well, I'm sure. But yeah, wing play also still quite a big part of the plan. If you look at some of the goals that like in Kone's massive catalogue, there's quite a fair few like crosses in there and stuff. So there was not adaptability, versatility. That's the word one. There was the versatility of us attacking from wide as well as through the middle, and that was really like refreshing to see. I think one of the results that really stands out that everybody will mention is when we went to Stockport County, who were doing, they were tipped to obviously do well last season, and they did. We went there and won 5-0, and it was like absolutely sweep them off the park. It was like nothing we'd ever seen in terms of like a Wycombe performance. And that is a game that, although Stockport were not quite at the races, that is a game that quite typifies the Bloomfield setup as well. Actually, something that I don't think gets talked about enough is, although it's free-flowing football and everything, some people might associate that as being like loads of chance creation and really dominating the ball. But that isn't necessarily always the case. And actually, for whatever reason, our stats, as the top scorers in the league, Bloomfield just got us being really clinical. Like the GA and everything, the XG, it wasn't like crazy high. We were just really good at taking our chances, and the quality of the chances were good as well.
Would you say you set up different compared to home and away from home?
Sometimes, yes. I would say more or less when available. Once he found kind of like the winning formula of his starting 11, certainly with the back four, we kind of stuck with that. But I do also think that there were times when he would rotate quite a bit with some of the midweek games and everything, which is fair enough. But more or less, once he kind of found his winning formula, he sort of stuck with it. The only thing that maybe that would be different about home and away is how much he was willing to let the opposition kind of have the ball and attack us. There were some where obviously like your Birmingham and some of the other ones where we sort of sat back a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah, there was a few where we had to sit back a little bit more, be a bit more patient and stuff. But yeah, looked resolute at the back as well, like everyone digging in for each other.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think in the past when we've had Rob Edwards as our manager, he was really like stubborn in the way that he wouldn't change. It was always the same way every single week. And then I think once teams clock on to what you're actually trying to do, they can easily get wins eventually. So it's good to have someone that is more, I think as a manager, the biggest trait you can have, the biggest strength is the adaptability, because you're never going to get what you want every single week, whether that's in-game or whether that's in-game or playing against someone else, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
You're not have the same players available to you. So being adaptable, I think, is absolutely key.
I agree.
During my research with Matt Bloomfield, I've got that he regularly rotated his starting 11. It wasn't always the same names playing every single game. Even like the likes of Richard Kone would sometimes actually start on the bench and then come on in the second half. Could you just give a little bit more detail? I think it's more towards the attacking players that would regularly rotate rather than like the whole team itself. But yeah, could you just give us a little bit more insight on that?
Yeah, he definitely rotated the attacking players more than the defensive ones. If I remember rightly as well, we had under Bloomfield, there was, if we're talking about last season, when we're playing like the best football ever and we're top scorers in the league and stuff, we definitely had a little bit more scope to rotate the players, because I think last season we had the best squad we've ever had in terms of depth and quality. And it didn't take too long for Bloomfield to kind of show that, putting his faith in the players and rotating a little bit. But defensively, from what I can remember, I think we definitely didn't rotate as much. There were some players as well who, in my opinion, were defensively, like, they were a bit of a liability, and it's not really too surprising that they went out on loan in January. And Bloomfield was kind of, he, having already tried and tested them, could see that they perhaps didn't quite fit his style, or they weren't quite up to standard. But yeah, in terms of attacking, people forget that with Kone, it was his first full season of professional football. So like, that's the first time that he's ever had a full preseason under his belt. And I can understand that he's still of the young age of 22, I think. And he's someone that Bloomfield has a lot of faith in. And while he was kind of on fire and scoring the majority of the goals, the temptation would be to keep playing him, because he's, when he's hot, he's hot. But at the same time, I can also understand the want to maybe preserve him and rest him a little bit. And he still showed that same level of hunger coming off the bench. But yeah, Kone did get rotated, perhaps a little bit more than what people would anticipate. There was one game in particular, I think it might have been, it was around Christmas time, away at Charlton, and two costly mistakes. We're losing 2-0, and it looked sadly like the unbeaten streak was going to come to an end. Kone comes off the bench with about 20 minutes to go, scores, and completely changed the game. We didn't get an equaliser, sadly. It finished 2-1, but that was a game where lots of people were like, Bloomfield got it wrong, Kone should have started from the off, kind of thing. And there was one or two games like that, but for the vast majority, I think he got his squad rotation pretty spot on, in my opinion.
The reason why I do ask that is because, so at Luton, when Matt Bloomfield kind of arrived, we basically had this long 18 months worth of injuries. Like, it was the same players getting injured. We couldn't manage them properly coming back from injury. But under Matt Bloomfield, that kind of all improved. It got a lot better. And the one thing he actually said when he came in was, the players are not fit. And we were midway through a season. He was like, yeah, these players are not fit. And he made us fitter during the season. Yeah. So I've just got a feeling in this upcoming year, he's going to just manage it so much better. These injury crises, which we've literally had for the last 2 years, hopefully are going to go away. So at the moment, we've kind of got about 6 or 7 players already out injured, just from like little niggles from either the previous season or from what they've got so far in this current pre-season. But he's still managing the players properly, which is what I really like about him. We've briefly spoke about him in Richard Kone. I've got to ask, multiple bids in January. What did you make of it?
Really interesting. I mean, it didn't surprise me. What maybe surprised me was just that Luton, you guys were just not taking no for an answer, and came back with ultimately what I believe was reported to be a £7 million bid. And if it wasn't in the thick of a promotion push, I do think we probably would have accepted that, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Bloomfield is somebody who has a lot of faith in Kone. He rates him very highly. And he was an essential part of the reason why, even when he first came to this country, I think he got a trial at Colchester and a trial at Wycombe, and it was through that connection that I think Bloomfield obviously was able to persuade him to come to Wycombe and everything. And once he got the work permit all sorted, and yeah, I mean, his ceiling is very high. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that after Bloomfield left, that played a big part in Kone's form dropping off towards the tail end of last season. Change of manager, I think that definitely contributed to Kone's form dropping off. I think there could be other factors as well. But yeah, no, the fact that Luton, obviously in the relegation zone, you guys were not scoring enough, that's for sure, needing some firepower. And I think Kone probably just purely off of momentum, probably would have been a good candidate. I can see why people would have wanted him at that stage of the season. Obviously, it's a fee that reflects the potential as well. So you're buying what essentially is that raw potential, which he's got quite a lot of. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future Bloomfield tries to link up with Kone again.
And that kind of does lead me on to my next question is, if I was to lock you in a room and you were negotiating, tell me the fee which you would have wanted back in January, and then what is the fee now? Because I know he's got, I think, is it 12 months left on his contract now? So I guess the valuation of him is slightly dropped, and because of the form as well.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it's the same.
I think his value, honestly, and I don't know if it was injury or tactics or mentality or what, but he looked a shadow of his former self towards that tail end of the season. Like the last sort of like 8 games, he was, I'm not even exaggerating, he was at times the worst player on the pitch. Like genuinely, I remember Bolton away. Great away game, that one, because that was the game where Wrexham dropped points, and I think we had just got back into the automatics, and we were getting our hopes up. Although we managed to win that game 2-0, that was comfortably the worst I had ever seen Richard Kone play. Touch of a trampoline, honestly. It was like a different person. And I want to try and give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm wondering if maybe he was playing with an injury. He did pick up a bad knee injury from, you might have seen it, the Barnsley player that got a straight red for the tackle in our home game against Barnsley. Guy got a straight red, and don't think Kone was the same player. And there was, I know that was in the midst of the January window as well. He came back with he was sort of playing with knocks and stuff, and he just wasn't the same player. So I think some of us were thinking that, well, he's playing with an injury. He's not 100% fit, but Dods' tactics as well, I think, also was completely isolating him. And because of that, his value was like literally depreciating with each game that he was playing under Dods. It was starting to get, like he wasn't looking like a £7 million player, like at all. So I think, 7 million for him in January probably was fair. It's just the fact that it was circumstantial with the fact that we were in a promotion push. I don't think we would have parted with him. But now I would probably say it really just depends on what Kone you're going to get. Already he's looked quite good in pre-season again, and he's scoring and he looks sharp and stuff. So maybe he did just need a rest. I would probably say it's going to be between probably 5 to 7 million, I would say.
Okay, because back when we were putting in the bids in January, I was like, right, at some point we need to stop, because we're getting to the bit where we're being overcharged here. Because I understand the potential. He's young. Even if he has one poor season, you've still got the resale value there. So I can understand it in terms of negotiations. I know teams know we've got money to spend from the parachute payments from the Premier League. So I get it. And a lot of teams were overcharging us. But we got to the point where we were absolutely desperate. Ended up signing a guy called Lassi Nordas from the Norway League. And I don't know how clued up you are about Norway football, but January is their start of their pre-season. Yeah. So we were signing him, and then he had to get up to match fitness, and it kind of didn't work out, but he looks quite good in pre-season at the moment. But yeah, we were so desperate, because we couldn't get Kone in, we ended up getting him in, and he kind of didn't really live up to the expectation. And I think it's harsh to judge him at the moment because of the Football Canada, him coming from a pre-season over to English football. It does take some adjustments, but I think some fans were just frustrated because we thought just paying the money, get Kone in, but it wasn't as simple as that. But I don't know if we'll go back in for him personally. I know we are trying to get another striker in. That is a position which, if we do get a striker in, we'll show some real content in this upcoming season for the title, in my opinion. But we definitely are a striker and a left back
Yeah.
away, I would say,
Yeah.
from proper challenging. Maybe by the time this video goes out, we'll have that striker in. I'm not too sure. I wanted to just go back to the tactics quickly and the playing style. Luton over the, I guess, the last 2 to 3 years, we've been known to be quite a set piece team. We've been really, really good from set pieces. Upon doing my research, Wycombe were also really good at set pieces. So could you tell me a bit more about how that went about, and if you were also good at attacking, were you also good at defending them as well?
I'd say defending we were really good actually. Under Bloomfield, we had some very, very good centre backs during that last season. We had Caleb Taylor on loan from West Brom. We had Joe Lowe, who's obviously now gone to Huddersfield. And for the latter part as well, coming in at January, I don't think anyone expected him to be as good as he was, but Sonny Bradley, on loan from Derby, was absolutely immense. And all of these guys, I mean, the tactics might have changed slightly more with Dods. I think Dods actually much more reliant on set pieces than Bloomfield. But in terms of defending set pieces, I think we were really good under Bloomfield. And in terms of attacking them, yeah, we had the odd goal or two. He wasn't ever afraid to chuck the centre-backs up there, even for the free kicks. We had players that, like Luke Leahy and everything, that did make the delivery of the free kicks maybe more attackable than like the average, because it isn't just a case of just hoofing it in there. Sometimes it is that you need a certain style of set piece taking to be able to hurt the opponent and ask some questions of them. And fortunately, we had that, I do think. We didn't score huge amounts from set pieces under Bloomfield from what I can remember, but it was respectable. It wasn't like some teams who wait forever to score a goal from a corner or anything like that. We had a few set piece routines as well from free kicks and stuff. But yeah, like I think from what I can remember, like defending them as well, I think was pretty good. Whether that will translate over to Luton, I'm not sure. But I'd say a lot of it does hinder massively on who's taking the set pieces.
Would short corners be a thing that he was doing quite a bit at Wycombe? And I know I might have thrown you up under the bus here, but short corners were like a massive regular thing for him, like during the 6 months so far. Because we were used to having Alfie Doughty lump into the back post. Colton Morris would win the first initial header, and then someone would win the second. But Alfie Doughty got injured, which meant the corner taker was different, the set piece taker was different, and a lot of the time we would go in short. So I don't know if that was something he was doing at Wycombe, maybe.
Yeah, I do remember Cameron Humphreys and co actually doing some short ones quite frequently. Not just the type to run down the clock, but just to draw that extra man in. Maybe one less person in the box, a little bit more space for somebody to attack. It did usually, it's a short corner with a means of getting it in the box still. I do remember we had our fair share of them. If not, regular set piece taker, left foot in swinger, maybe Luke Leahy, or I don't know actually, because Luke Leahy didn't actually get as much game time under Bloomfield perhaps as Dods. Trying to think who the other set piece like taker would have been in our team. Probably maybe it was Cameron Humphreys. Yeah, maybe it was Cameron Humphreys doing the longer ones as well, actually.
Cool. In terms of the importance of wide players in Matt Bloomfield's system, what role do they have? Because I can imagine, like you say, he transitioned, played multiple different formations.
Yeah.
But from what I know about Wycombe, the style was, you can play through the middle, but also get the ball up quick as possible to the attacking players.
Yeah. So I would say they do play a very big role. We had, I mean, for the most part, if we look at Fred Onyedinma and Gareth McCleary, they are both aging, it's fair to say, but Bloomfield found a way to make them effective still. And I would say the most important part of it was a very big reliance on support from the fullbacks. He really made sure that they got involved and the link up was good with the winger and the fullback, because with all due respect, Fred Onyedinma and Gareth McCleary, while they can cause some problems. I don't think they're the kind of wingers nowadays that can take a game by the scruff of the neck and, like, more often than not beat a player on their own. I think it was the fullbacks supporting them that then they can, you know, link up, spin off, etc., and go. That actually ended up causing much more problems, and we would be able then to get the crosses into the box, the cutback, whatever it might be. So yeah, like I said, the season before, like, Gareth McCleary didn't have a good season, but under Bloomfield, he managed to find sort of like a second wind. I think Bloomfield really got like a good system that kind of helped work, and he still gave lots of license for the wider players to go forward and to attack and be a little bit more adventurous, not be so kind of like, I don't know, Pep Guardiola robotic, turn in and pass it and stuff. So yeah, I would say that he managed to get a really good kind of system going, but it relied quite heavily on support from the fullbacks.
So when Luton did come in for Matt Bloomfield, how did you initially feel when he decided to leave Wycombe?
Surprised, really surprised, because not knowing like what's going on behind the scenes or what the reason is behind it does leave you kind of a bit surprised and disappointed as well, dare I say, because it seemed a bit of a, with all due respect, when you look at the stature of the club and the position of the club in Luton, from where we are now and the timing as well, it just seemed a bizarre switch. It just seemed like, why would I go from top end of League One to bottom end of Championship, who have a very good chance of not being able to stay up, and that happened. So it did seem circumstantially like there's definitely more to this than meets the eye. So it was just really confusing. Like, confusion was the overriding feeling, and it kind of, it really worried me, because I said, and it panned out exactly as I predicted. I said, unless we get in some super high caliber name for a replacement manager, I worry that, like, not only will we miss out on promotion, but just the feel good factor around the club will go as well. And I really do think that happened.
I think a lot of Luton fans can definitely understand that. The same happened to us. We were fighting for promotion at the top end, and when we were last in League One, Nathan Jones decides to go to Stoke. We're like, why are you leaving? You're leaving during a January transfer window. We also had a really tough run of games. We had the big boys in Sunderland and Portsmouth at the time. We also had our application with our new stadium also ongoing, which ended up getting approved that month. So there was a lot of things going on, and we thought, why would you go to Stoke? We could be there in 6 months' time. And if you look at Stoke now, since then, they've still not really recovered as a football club. So yeah, we definitely understood, but we were lucky, I guess. We had a club legend in Mick Harford, who was part of the recruitment staff, who just kind of filled in. And we just basically took that momentum. I think the players kind of used it as like second wind, he left us, so we're going to prove him wrong, basically. And we managed to, in the end, use that momentum to win the title. Unfortunately, I don't think you guys maybe had that someone already in the building, whereas we, lucky enough, we did. Which was helpful. When Matt Bloomfield did arrive in his press conferences, he did not say some backhanded comments, but he referenced a few things that some things weren't going his way at Wycombe in terms of talking to the board, whether that was recruitment or football decisions. Could you shine a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, so I think anybody who's looked into it enough by now will see that Bloomfield didn't just go, oh, Luton, that's a better offer, I'm just going to go there. It wasn't like that at all. There's definitely more going on behind the scenes. Without going too much into detail of it, I would say, there was disagreements between Bloomfield and the board, more so towards the kind of the long term. I don't think there was anything that Bloomfield was doing wrong in the short term. It was more so just about things in the long term. Recruitment's a good questionable point, actually. I do think that there were some signings in the January transfer window that they struck us as a little bit strange. On paper, Wycombe trying to go down this sort of data route. The players looked good prospects, but we were looking at them thinking, like, are these Bloomfield signings? Like, these were a bit strange. And it almost kind of felt like our club had lost the kind of like the character profiling that we used to be so big on under Gareth Ainsworth. So some of the recruitment was a little bit questionable. And when there's players, you know, like Aaron Morley, who had gone back to his parent club, Bolton, who had done an amazing job under Bloomfield, and you'd think, well, the logical thing to do would be pay a fee and get him back because he's already proven his worth in the first half of the season, and he would integrate with the squad personally. He would integrate with the squad effortlessly. Then, you know, to not be getting players like him back again permanently definitely would have thrown up some questions, because we know Bloomfield would have really wanted Aaron Morley permanently, for example. Yeah, there's a lot of question marks. I think there's some things that we'll never truly fully understand all the ins and outs of, but I don't think that those backhanded digs in Bloomfield's opening interview and stuff weren't said without kind of like he knows what he's saying sort of thing.
I think nowadays in modern day football, we're getting to the point where we're starting to see a lot of head coaches or managers, they come out and talk about recruitment. Because from my understanding, if you're a manager, you have a major part in recruitment. If you're a head coach, yes, you have a say, but not really have a say, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the recruitment team and the board, they kind of take over the recruitment. But at Luton, I think he does have a major say on recruitment, as far as I know, and from speaking to people at the club, he does have a say. So maybe he's getting a lot more responsibility. I'm not too sure. But yeah, a lot of stuff you're saying, it does make sense.
Yeah.
In terms of...
Is he manager or head coach at Luton?
He's manager.
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really go down I don't think we will go down the head coach route and calling someone a head coach. And I think as well, with what you were saying about maybe potential disagreements with the board, some might think that's a surprise, because people think at Luton the board, it's not 100%, you know, he's going to get his way. So there will definitely be probably disagreements between the Luton board and Matt Bloomfield. It's just how they deal with that relationship, with that balance of getting the right ones go for and against each other. In terms of if Matt Bloomfield did stay at Wycombe, would you back, Wycombe just go up if he stayed the season?
Yeah. I'm confident that I think like the squad would have. I don't know. It's hard to say, because like the January transfer window on paper looked amazing, and some of them, I think, again, like we had the same problem as you. We had a couple of Scandinavian guys come over to our two record signings from Denmark, and both of them, I guess, with the timing of their football calendar, they weren't quite able to hit the ground running and make an impact. Some other really questionable signings, but I think just in terms of like not having that destabilization, restabilization that we've had with Mike Dods, I do back us. Like the form we were in, the momentum, people were really starting to take us seriously, and I'm confident that had Bloomfield stayed, we would have been promoted last season.
How do you think he's going to do as the Luton manager in League One?
I'd expect Luton to be right up there, but it's a squad that is some way off of being ready, because I think while obviously Luton have got the money and everything, I know that you said about the injuries as well. There's enough, there's some really standout players in there who obviously have played at a higher level that I think will be really effective in League One. I also think combine that with the fact that Bloomfield knows the division, and he'll know how to manage the squad a little bit better. He'll know what games he can afford to take a bit more of a punt and rotate players for the sake of resting them. I think he's pretty good at that. And I think, like I would say, I'm expecting Luton to be challenging for the automatic spots if they can finish this transfer window strong. they've got the funds to do so. They just need to kind of, get that additional firepower in, and maybe, I don't know what other areas I say only the firepower that I keep hearing about is like what you need. But if you give Bloomfield that and you give him time, I do think he'll like definitely grow into it as the season goes on. I think Luton will be up there.
Yeah, Al Hamadi, the former FC Wimbledon striker, he's currently now at Ipswich.
We had him for a bit as well before Wimbledon, but never seen anything about him that suggested he would go on to make it in the Prem, honestly.
Yeah, so we've seen reports about him potentially might be coming to the club, and I think if we can bring him in, that would pretty much put us in a really good position. I think with us, there's a lot of, because of last season, people said Luton were too good to go down, and that's the kind of like line which has been planted across the squad. But last year we did, as a football club, we made a lot of poor football mistakes which made us go down. If we didn't make those football decisions like incorrectly, we would have stayed up, because naturally the squad was more than capable. So we didn't get relegated because we were like not good enough to stay up. We got relegated because we stopped being the old Luton. We stopped being this team that teams would hate to play against. We thought we could rock up to Millwall or Blackburn at home and think we could easily beat them like we used to be able to. That wasn't old Luton. Old Luton was, no, we had to perform way above expectations in order to win. That's how we climbed up the division. That's how we progressed. And that's how we got into the Premier League. It was always working harder than the opponent. And if Matt Bloomfield can get us back to what he used to the old Luton, and install that really good positive culture, because I think if you do well at Wycombe, they have a good culture there.
Yeah.
You don't, without sounding disrespectful, you can't just go to Wycombe and just get easy, like start winning games. It doesn't work like that, because of how many big clubs in League One. You've got to operate slightly different to the other big boys in the league in order to win games, and that does come from having a fantastic culture, not having players that are big-headed in the dressing room, for example. So if he can get us back to that, then I think we're going to be in a really good. I actually think we are going to be one of the teams competing, but I think in this upcoming League One season, there's about like 8 to 10 teams that I think could easily get into those top 6.
Yeah,
easily, and then there's a gap. And then there's the other like pot of teams that could potentially go down. But I think in terms of playoffs, it's definitely up for grabs, because I don't think Plymouth and Cardiff are as strong as the likes of Stockport, Bolton, Blackpool even. I can imagine the likes of Barnsley and Peterborough are also going to have a much better season than they did last year. So, yeah, it's going to be a really like competitive season in this upcoming year. I want to ask this as the final question. Where do you see Wycombe potentially finishing in this upcoming year? Do you think you can do the same as what you did last year and get into those playoff positions?
No, I don't think there's any way we can do the same as last year in terms of like storming up the league. I still have major question marks over the manager or head coach, Mike Dods. I just didn't see enough in, again, given how good the squad was in terms of depth and ability, I did not see enough from him in the second half of last season to suggest that long term this could really be something. We've had again on paper what looks like a really good summer transfer window. If we're keeping Kone as well, it's even better. But there's still plenty of time for all things to change. I think that if I was to say where I place us in the league, I honestly think our first 5 league games will tell us everything I need to know in terms of how we set up, how positive it is, etc. And if we don't really hit the ground running, it's going to be a long season for us. I honestly think if we don't kind of hit the ground running, we finish 10th. And if we do go, okay, yeah, these signings have been good, everything's kind of clicking, because that's really what wasn't happening when Dods came in last season. And now he's got some players that maybe he had a bit more of a say in terms of recruitment. There's 1 or 2 that have worked with him before. If we hit the ground running, I think we get the last playoff spot. That's what I think. But in terms of like Dods' style of football, he says it's going to be different next season. I'm not so sure. He's still learning on the job, and I think he's yeah, I just wasn't. I was not encouraged by what I saw towards the tail end of last season, and it's hard for me to imagining that changing too much. So I would say it's going to be somewhere between 10th and 6th. And 6th is the best possible outcome of us getting the last playoff spot.
A massive thank you to Steve for giving us his thoughts and feelings about Wycombe. We also talk about Richard Kone in the interview. It was good to get a bit more insight about him and also what to expect in this upcoming year. Hopefully that gives you a bit more context about Matt Bloomfield and about what he actually did at the football club at Wycombe last season. So yeah, hopefully you did enjoy the video. Smash that like button. Let me know what you think down in the video comments. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.